SketchyGOichie.
Hey guys, welcome to my latest video. This is in my kind of how to draw series. This one's the gods, the mythological Greek gods. I had some fun with this one. It's pretty much just a head studies. I wanted to show you guys my approach to quickly rendering heads. Oftentimes, just for practice and just to kind of loosen up the wrist, I'll go in and draw a bunch of heads. Oftentimes, I don't have any rhyme or reason. In this case, I chose specifically to draw kind of some Greek gods, and I started off here with Ares, the god of war, and then I moved quickly over to Medusa, which I don't believe she's a god. She's probably a Greek mythological creature, but I don't know. For some reason, she kind of fit in with the gang that I chose to render. I was really going to just draw one head, and then I got onto the page and just started adding to it. And it's kind of the way it's kind of like a morning wake up drill or exercise that I do sometimes if I have the time. I'll just kind of break out and open up a document or select a free page in a sketchbook and just start rendering heads. Heads to me are oftentimes the thing that gives young artists the most trouble, or should I say the most angst about getting right. The reality is drawing heads is just like anything else. It's all sort of based on a basic shape that you start with, generally an oval. Sometimes I sort of draw off of sort of a box or a rectangle, and I put dimension on it, and I kind of use that as my under drawing shape, and then I'll kind of create the planes of everything else, the planes, the eye line and where the nose and the mouth goes. So anyway, so those were the three characters. I render those in Procreate and quickly render them using a pencil tool. I think it was like the 6B pencil I selected in Procreate. And then I'm continuing on using those same tools and also in Procreate. I was like, all right, so I rendered, as you saw earlier, I rendered Medusa and Zeus and Ares. And so I decided, well, let me do my take on Poseidon. And so I did this sort of wavy, curly-haired beard and hair, and that little swoosh off to the left there is, I don't know, maybe some sort of part of his cape or cloak that's coming up. And I did a weird kind of crown made out of, or should I say like a half of a crown made out of fish for some reason. Pretty literal, but... and then in this one, I decided also to kind of throw some texture in for the hair. I noticed, a lot of the Greek gods have these big, flowing, curly beards, particularly when you see the statues of them. And I should mention now that if you notice, like whenever I render my head characters, they've got, particularly ones when I'm doing them out of my imagination, they have sort of exaggerated proportions. Not, they're lifelike, but not drawn from real life. So for me, if I were to draw from real life, I would actually get a photo and I'd work it up off of a photo. But when I'm just drawing for fun, I just kind of laid a pencil down. Speaking of pencil, I sort of moving on to my next character here. I believe this one was Hades. And I switched over to a pen tool for this one. Not sure why. I think maybe I just liked a sharper line. And, so I dialed back the opacity, and I also lowered the size of the brush or the pen, and that's why the lines here are a lot more rigid, and it feels a bit more rendered, a little more refined in the rendering style. But if you notice, I don't put a lot of underdrawing lines. Stylistically, I think, particularly if you're learning how to draw heads, I would do all the construction lines, all the ovals and all the ellipses and all the sort of underlines it takes to kind of construct where eyes should meet or the distance eyes should be from each other, and the distance from the eyes from the nose, and the nose to the mouth, and the mouth to the chin, and but for me, because I've rendered so many faces and over the years, I kind of have a rough stylized version of it. So that was Hades, and I kind of brought, if you notice, I brought Poseidon in on the page. I have this weird thing whenever I render a page of random characters, even if I'm working in a sketchbook, not even necessarily on the computer or on the iPad, I will sort of compose the collection of heads on the page in a pleasing way, at least a pleasing way for me. I make a little kind of quasi composition of the heads on the page. Don't have to do it, and you certainly don't have to do it, but for some reason I really, it doesn't feel right for me if I just kind of draw random heads and they don't sort of, not interact, but they don't sort of, the composition is off. It doesn't feel right. And I'll actually draw, if the composition is off, I will draw little heads in the spaces in between, just to kind of fill the composition so it feels a little better. So here I'm doing Hera. I think Hera is the goddess of marriage and of birth. So her crown, for some strange reason, I just decided to draw these weird little babies in there, these little cheruby babies, to make up her crown rather than like a crown of flowers in her hair. And I did her, these sort of curls that kind of dangle down and along the side and along the back of her head. And I want to do sort of like an old Greek sort of goddess look to her. And she's angry. She's probably angry because Zeus is always cheating on her with in creating demigods. So last one that I'm rendering here is Apollo. Apollo, I believe, is a god of music and such. And I always imagine Apollo to be kind of like the pretty boy of the gods. Kind of a little more aloof character and certainly confident. I try to reflect that in there in the expression, which is a good point. Whenever I'm rendering these characters, I like to give them a little expression, whether it be anger or a delight or whatever. I think it's a fun thing to practice along with just drawing the random shapes of a face. Throw a little emotion in there and it'll give your sketches a little more drama, and it's great to practice. So putting the finishing touches on this, as you see, I kind of composed them all on the page. But so anyways, that's my gods, my mythological gods. Hope you guys enjoy these. I will keep uploading them as long as you keep liking them. Anyways, SketchyGOichie. Live your moment. Happy sketching.